Good people of YouTube, it is I, Johnny, back at it again with another video. And today, now that Ashoka has wrapped up, I want to give my final thoughts about the show overall. And as you can tell by the thumbnail, I absolutely love this show as a Star Wars fan, and think that if you are a fan of old school or just Star Wars in general, you should watch the show. Now, before I get to why, if you enjoy the content you are listening to and get here, please, for me, like the video, subscribe to the page, and hit that notification bell so anytime new content is uploaded, you will be made aware of it. Plus, it helps promote the show and pushes the page to new listeners, and you all are my greatest source of marketing, and I'll greatly appreciate that if you can do that for me. But I'm going to lay out why I believe the show is a must watch. And yes, there will be spoilers in case you haven't watched the show. So be prepared and on the lookout for that. Now, the first thing I noticed about the show was that it appears that Dave Filoni and the crew is trying to fill in a story after episode 6 that can be expanded upon, and in a way to be a trilogy in its own self that will replace episodes 7, 8, and 9 without actually having to say it bluntly. So it's no secret that even though the sequel trilogy films grossed pretty well in the box office, most average and certainly hardcore Star Wars fans know that those movies weren't any good due to Disney deciding to say screw what that guy George Lucas was trying to talk about and went their own way. In many ways, Dave Filoni with this show tried to correct that, wrong that was done there with Ahsoka by bringing in a lot of what we saw in the original 6 films and the shows, while hearkening back to those times and bringing in or hinting at Legends lore material. For example, the Mortis gods back in the Clone Wars played a role in helping Anakin see his full potential in the Force, but also the dark path that he will go down. In Legends, we know that Abeloth has major ties to the father, daughter, and son, and with Balin on Peridea searching for something that's calling out to him, it very well could be Abeloth. Myself and a lot of people in the community actually believe this, and introducing her character will bring in so many things from Legends. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think you actually understand the possibilities in this. We have Luke Skywalker now, but in this trilogy, yes, it would have to be that with a character such as Abeloth. You couldn't just do that in one film. We could get that OP Legends version of Luke Skywalker with him having to bring help to actually, combat Abeloth with a host of others like Darth Krayt, who I talked about in my most powerful Sith video, if you want to go check that out. And yes, even Ahsoka, even though in Legends, Ahsoka was not involved in them taking down Abeloth, but it will still be pretty crazy to see. Considering when the show is taking place, it can certainly fit nicely between the period of episodes 6 and 7, since there is a 20-year gap between the two in the Star Wars timeline. The other thing I like about the show, even though I get some people hating it, Sabine being able to use the Force. This is actually something I predicted, that this would actually happen in the last video I made about the show, but here's why I think this is a fact. We all know that Sabine is from Mandalore, and even though it's rare, a person or a Mandalorian that are actually Force sensitive. Like, for example, the original wielder of the Darksaber, Terry Vizsla, was the first Mandalorian to use the Force, and Sabine's family just so happens to be a descendant of him, so her being able to actually use the Force isn't actually shocking to me. I do wish they would have touched on how she learned to use it versus the lazy way she did it, like in the out of desperation, and then all of a sudden she was able to use the Force to push Ezra to Thrawn's ship the second time, when she actually, used it the first time to help kill that undead stormtrooper. But outside of that, I have actually no issues with her being able to use the Force. The next time we actually see Sabine, she just very well could be and should be far along with her Jedi training, and it gives the writers an opportunity to right two wrongs. The first I hinted at with Sabine being able to use the Force to push Ezra, and the second is Disney showing how one's ability in the Force is actually gained and learned. It takes time to learn and master how to wield the Force. It's just not something that you just get on a whim. Dave says he's a big, fan of George Lucas and his work. So he should know this, and in future projects should actually correct this, because we saw a lot of just the Force coming natural in 7, 8, and 9 with Rey's character and all that crazy stuff. So hopefully Dave correct this in the upcoming Star Wars projects. The other thing that made this show great was how, even though, yes, the main storyline of the show was, Sabine, and even to a lesser degree, Ashoka trying to find Ezra, and yes, not having Thrawn actually return to the, to the main galaxy, I do like the fact that Thrawn won at the end of the day. Many times in shows, heck, even in past Star Wars shows, the main heroes were also able to save the day or prevent the thing from happening that they were trying to, but here that didn't happen. While watching the show, I always felt that somehow the team was going to be able to stop Thrawn and defeat him, whether it be through plot armor or anything else goofy, but Dave didn't actually let that happen this time. The other aspect of Ahsoka that made this show worth watching is each character in the show that actually mattered actually meant something, well, outside of Morag. But Morag was standing. Each character in the show, played a significant role. With that said, a lot of the times in shows, you get characters that are in the show and they're supposed to bring value to the show, but instead just end up filling space. Each person played a meaningful role in the show and had their moments to truly put their characters on display. In many ways, while watching, you could feel that most characters in the show would be around for a while and wouldn't be killed during the first season. To me, it explains why, even though each person had some story building aspect in the show, you didn't have to actually, just escalate and accelerate them. They could be built over the arc that is incoming, which I like, versus the forcing it in, to fit some unrealistic narrative. Now, there were some subtle things changed in each character that some may have missed or didn't see it as a big deal. Like, for example, Ahsoka's clothes, changing after her return from the World Between Worlds, or Ezra's lightsaber going from the green that he actually utilizing Rebels to blue at the end there, where he actually crafts another lightsaber. With that said, I want to bring clarity in case anyone listening may not be aware of why those two things are important and how they would actually play a role in later Star Wars projects. So let's begin with Ahsoka. Ahsoka being in white, we first saw actually at the end of Rebels in the final season after Order 66 took place. This was supposed to represent her coming out as a representative of the light that isn't all the way like the Jedi we actually came to know, since the light side of the Force is way more complex than that. Her encounter with the daughter of Mortis, I believe, played a big role in this, since she is, the daughter that is, the embodiment of the light. As we saw at the end of Ahsoka in episode 8, when Baylan was standing on the hand of the father, there was a statue of the father and the son, but there was no statue of the daughter, and I believe this is due to Ahsoka's ties with the daughter. As far as Ezra, lightsaber crystal going from green to blue, in Star Wars, a blue kyber crystal, or a blue crystal, or lightsaber, means truth and serenity, and in Ezra's time in Peridea, he could have actually reached a new level of peace with his place in the Force, which is why his crystal turned blue this time when he bled it, instead of green like before. these type of details being added in the show, it actually shows the development of the characters without making it seem so obvious, and makes you actually pay attention a little bit more. My last point I want to talk about is adding Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker character to the show. Now, I know some people might believe that this was done as fan service or trying to add a character that is actually popular to goat people into watching the show, but I actually see this a little differently. So the entire Star Wars universe, if you will, and Star Wars story is about Anakin Skywalker and his role in the Force, which, since that's the case, he should actually play a huge role in Star Wars, right? In the sequel films, he was only mentioned as someone that Kylo Ren was supposed to try and surpass and look up to as a distant, dead mentor in Darth Vader. But doing that, in my opinion, was selling his character and role in Star Wars grossly short. As we saw in the Clone Wars, after Anakin met the Father on Mortis, his role in the Force was way more than just being a simple Jedi or even his turn to the dark side. His role in Ahsoka in the show is setting him up to be just that, in my opinion, of course, but we will see how Dave Filoni and his team portrays his character going forward in future Star Wars projects. If you haven't watched the show and was on the fence about watching it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. With that said though, let me know what you think in the comments about the show. Did you like Ahsoka? Did you not like it? Did you agree with anything that I mentioned here about the show? Let me know your thoughts. And until the next video, you all have a great day. Peace.